To young Canadians, I want to say something. You've had 2 crucial years of adulthood dramatically interrupted by COVID, and then you were hit by global inflation and increased interest rates. These events upended your educations, your first jobs, your early years of building a career and a network. So we've been working hard to make sure that our economy has great jobs for you. We've eliminated interest on loans for your education. We're helping you save up to buy a home, but we know there's lots more to do.
Recent headlines have been dominated by stories about soaring housing prices and affordability challenges. But what's really happening behind the scenes? Welcome to today's video, where we'll dive deep into Canada's housing crisis, exploring how it's affecting the everyday lives of Canadians and its economic repercussions. Behind the scenes, the housing market has been witnessing a complex interplay of factors contributing to the surge in prices. Low mortgage rates, limited housing inventory, increased demand fueled by demographic shifts, and post-pandemic relocation trends have all played a role. Additionally, supply chain disruptions and rising construction costs have hindered the development of new housing, exacerbating the affordability crisis. These factors have created a challenging environment for prospective homebuyers and have put a spotlight on the need for comprehensive policy interventions to address the issue. To comprehend the current situation, let's look at the numbers. Housing prices have been on a relentless upward trajectory, making homeownership an elusive dream for many. In cities such as Toronto and Vancouver, housing prices have skyrocketed significantly. A house in Toronto now costs roughly $1.1 million, while in Vancouver, the price stands at around $1.2 million. This stark reality has rendered the dream of home ownership almost unattainable for many young Canadians. In these urban centers, the cost of housing exceeds the average family income by nearly 9-fold, posing a formidable barrier to purchasing a home. In August, the national sales figure was dragged down by decreases in several key regions, including Greater Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, Montreal, Ottawa, Hamilton, Burlington, as well as London and St. Thomas. For new Canadian homebuyers, the dream of owning a home has become increasingly out of reach. The ratio of home prices to household incomes reached unprecedented levels last year, emphasizing the exorbitant cost of housing. Additionally, the Bank of Canada's Housing Affordability Index has significantly worsened due to the combination of soaring home prices and the recent increase in mortgage rates. The Canadian housing market has experienced unprecedented growth, driven by low interest rates and surging demand. In a recent TV interview, Benjamin Tal, the deputy chief economist at CIBC, emphasized that the housing market will remain unattainable for a significant number of Canadians. Tal assesses home affordability through 2 key measures: the accessibility for first-time homebuyers and the availability of social housing. He expects both indicators to reflect continued strain throughout the housing market. Matthew Graham, the Chief Operating Officer at Mortgage News Daily, expressed his sentiments on CNBC, describing the current situation as painful and unattractive. At present, the housing market is facing a concerning mix of soaring mortgage rates, exorbitant prices, constrained supply, and unexpectedly robust pent-up demand. This complex interplay of factors has sparked worry among prospective buyers and sellers, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear within the market. The persistent pressure from elevated mortgage rates and the challenge posed by unyielding housing prices have significantly dampened the enthusiasm for property investments. The scarcity of available properties has intensified the competition among buyers, further compounding the existing sense of unease and insecurity. The surge in housing prices, initially fueled by heightened demand during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, has created a challenging environment for potential homebuyers. Adding to these hurdles, the widely utilized 30-year fixed mortgage rate has spiked to 8%, reaching its highest level in several decades. This sharp increase has further intensified the current obstacles, making it increasingly hard for aspiring homeowners to enter the market. Alarmingly, the demand for mortgages has significantly declined, plummeting to a degree not seen in almost 3 decades, highlighting the severity of the circumstances and the strain on the housing sector. In response to the initial phases of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Federal Reserve reduced its benchmark rate to 0 and injected funds into mortgage-backed securities. Consequently, mortgage rates hit record lows and remained at those levels for an extensive period of 2 years. This unprecedented development led to a surge in buyer activity, strengthened by both a sudden shift away from urban centers and the widespread adoption of remote work practices. As a result, home prices experienced a 40% increase compared to their pre-pandemic levels, highlighting the significant impact of these shifts on the housing market. The subsequent surge in inflation prompted the Federal Reserve to increase interest rates. Ironically, this action further escalated the already high costs within the housing market. Typically, when interest rates rise, housing prices tend to decrease, but in this case, the dynamics have taken an unexpected turn, resulting in an even more expensive housing market. In contrast to historical market trends, the current scenario is further complicated by an acute shortage of housing supply. The effects of the Great Recession in 2008 and the subsequent foreclosure crisis dealt a severe blow to home builders, leading to a prolonged period of underbuilding that has persisted for over a decade. Consequently, the housing industry has yet to bridge the gap created during this tumultuous period, worsening the existing supply constraints and perpetuating the challenges within the housing market. This demand, especially in urban centers, has led to a supply-demand imbalance. It's not just about high prices, it's about how it's affecting the daily lives of Canadians. For ordinary Canadians, these rising housing costs translate to higher living expenses. Many families are allocating a significant portion of their income to housing. It has consequently reshaped household budgeting and put significant pressure on overall living standards, presenting a critical challenge for many Canadian families. The financial strain affects Canadians' ability to save, invest, or enjoy other aspects of life. It's a significant challenge. During their interview with the Financial Post, Realtors John Pasalis, president of Reelosophy Realty, and Steve Soretsky, a Vancouver realtor at Oakwyn Realty, delved into the recent housing data about the Toronto and Vancouver markets. The widespread impact of soaring housing costs has echoed throughout the daily lives of Canadians, significantly altering their financial landscapes and reshaping their long-term economic prospects. With a substantial portion of income being directed into housing expenses, families are compelled to navigate a delicate balance between meeting their basic needs and ensuring financial stability. This burden weighs heavily on their ability to plan for the future, save for emergencies, and invest in other essential aspects such as education and healthcare, ultimately constraining their overall quality of life. Protests and demonstrations have erupted across the country, with people demanding affordable housing solutions. But what can be done to address this crisis? The widespread outcry through protests and demonstrations across the nation shows the urgency of finding effective and sustainable solutions to the housing affordability crisis. Addressing this multifaceted challenge requires a comprehensive approach that integrates both short-term and long-term strategies. Policymakers can consider implementing measures such as increasing affordable housing development, facilitating regulatory reforms to incentivize construction, promoting public-private partnerships, and providing targeted financial assistance to vulnerable populations. In fact, fostering innovative initiatives that encourage sustainable and inclusive urban planning and prioritizing community engagement can play a crucial role in mitigating the adverse effects of the housing crisis and ensuring a more equitable housing landscape for all Canadians. Policymakers are actively working to implement measures including increasing housing supply, rental control policies, and first-time homebuyer incentives. They are committed to finding solutions that balance economic growth with housing affordability and understanding the financial hardships many Canadians face. In response to mounting pressure concerning the scarcity of affordable housing, the Canadian government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, urged cities to take decisive action and offered the promise of federal funding to those who cooperate. Housing Minister Sean Fraser highlighted the necessity for cities to address bureaucratic impediments and zoning complexities that contribute to the housing crisis. He emphasized that municipalities working in tandem with the government would have access to the recently introduced $3 billion housing fund. Speaking to reporters at a gathering of Liberal legislators in London, Ontario, Fraser emphasized the government's new expectations, stressing the importance of building residences close to transit systems and educational institutions. He stressed the significance of ensuring that families have easy access to essential services, framing these requests as reasonable and essential. Housing affordability varies across provinces, with some regions experiencing more acute problems than others. It's a complex issue requiring targeted strategies. Advocates and nonprofit organizations are instrumental in supporting vulnerable populations and safeguarding housing as a fundamental human right. According to the Times columnist, federal housing advocate Marie-Josée Holley has characterized the increase of homeless encampments in various Canadian cities as a human rights emergency. Holley emphasized that individuals residing in these encampments are among the most vulnerable in Canadian society, having endured a history of human rights infringements, leaving them at an elevated risk of experiencing additional violations. The encampment has evolved into a focal point for a mounting protest concerning housing standards in the province, with inhabitants advocating for secure and sustainable housing rather than temporary accommodation and shelters. The Canadian housing market has gained significant attention recently, sparking discussions and speculations about the possibility of a looming crash. Our analysis suggests a likely trajectory for the market's future. Central to the discussion is the question of when the market will hit its lowest point. According to a recent economic analysis by RBC, the anticipated bottom is projected to materialize in the spring of 2023. However, this projection does not imply that the housing correction has concluded. RBC's forecast indicates an estimated 15% peak-to-trough decline in home prices nationwide, with approximately half of this adjustment still pending. Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta are expected to witness a decline of 19%, 16%, and 6% respectively. This correction serves to counterbalance a portion of the considerable home price surges observed between late 2020 and February 2022. RBC emphasizes that the drastic market fluctuations since March 2022 show a cyclical event, indicative of the transition from highly unusual circumstances, namely the global pandemic and historically low interest rates. Structurally, RBC maintains that the market remains fundamentally robust despite these recent shifts. In conclusion, the Canadian housing crisis is a complex issue with profound economic and social consequences. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below.